Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast that goes beyond basic film criticism to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole, and with me today is
Stacy.
And Garret.
And what are we overanalyzing this week?
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Yes, the prequel to The Hunger Games, directed by the same Francis Lawrence who did the other movies. It's the story of Coriolanus Snow, years before he would become the tyrannical president of Panem. He is handsome and charming, and though the Snow family has fallen on hard times, Coriolanus sees a chance for a change in his fortunes when he is chosen to be a mentor for the 10th Hunger Games, only to have his elation dashed when he is assigned to a mentor, a girl tribute named Lucy Gray Baird from the impoverished District 12. Okay. So I'm going to level set for the audience. All three of us read the book.
Yes.
So we have no idea what this movie would be like if you did not read the book.
Fair.
Sorry.
I saw it with somebody who did, and they thought it was an okay movie, but, like, if
Okay.
you read the book, this is your Christmas. Like,
Yeah. So,
um,
kick us off.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. Because I was going in expecting it to be kind of really not done well. The book was so good in my mind that I was like, oh, how are they going to capture some of the emotion? How are they going to capture some of the integral parts about, like, because the book is told from a narrating standpoint. And so it's hard to kind of portray that on screen at times where the inner dialogue is not always there.
Yeah, so the book is basically told almost entirely from the perspective of Snow,
Coriolanus, yeah.
right? So it's a unreliable narrator as sort of a feature of the book. So you only see the characters through his eyes.
And limited knowledge narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what I was expecting, like, it's kind of to be more sinister because it was his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually surprised at how balanced it actually was and made me feel for him in a way that I did not enjoy. Because, like, I don't want to be rooting for knockoff Draco Malfoy right now. But...
Yeah. What did you think, Stacy?
I'm such a fan of the first four. Was it 4 films? Or is
Four
it just
films,
3?
three books, 4 films.
Thank you. So I was, I'm a fan. I'm going in. I want it to be what I want it to be. I'd say I really enjoyed aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll start with positives. Anytime Peter Dinklage came on, it's just, I just float away to heaven every time he starts speaking. His performances are just, it's a lot of eyebrow acting, but you know what? I'm here for it. It's so good. He elevates everything he's in. Anytime, is it Rachel Zegler?
Yeah, she was amazing.
Every time she came up and started singing, those songs were so well arranged. Her vocals are gorgeous.
Yeah.
So full of soul. I was crying every time someone on screen was crying from her singing. That was really effective. I couldn't get over it felt like most of the whole movie was filmed with a fisheye lens. I really couldn't get over that heavy, like that deep wide angle lens the whole time. One of the things I loved about the first movies was, I'm really surprised to understand that the same director was on board, because the first movies were all very, especially in District 12, a lot of shaky cam, digital, and then you'd get to the Capitol, and maybe in the Capitol there was some more kind of grandiose wide-angle lens, making it feel very epic and large. But then when you would get into intimate scenes with Katniss and Haymitch or whoever, it would pick up shaky cam again. This was just it just looked like Harry Potter the whole time.
Except for that one scene where she's still in the zoo? And he comes to see her, and the full screen is just them in profile.
Talking
to each other, which was so well done.
So I thought it was intentionally shot that way.
Yeah.
Not a fisheye lens, a snake slit lens.
Stop it.
No, seriously,
Stop it.
That's what I felt like, that you were looking only at that narrow, kind of wide, broadband vision.
Yeah.
Where things are happening in front of you, but you're missing everything that's going on behind you.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I literally
That's a
thought
fun
that's why
read.
it was
I did too.
shot that way
that
intentionally.
was his interpretation of how to film a book that is entirely from the perspective of one person, without an omniscient narrator, right?
Okay.
Agreed.
So yeah, I and it was different, and I thought, okay, I have a few things. I have a lot of feelings about this book. One, I would like to thank Francis Lawrence and the writers for the second time they did not write into the movie the scariest thing that happened in the book.
Oh.
So I was like, in the original Hunger Games, at the end of their first Hunger Games, the mutts have all the faces of the fallen tributes. I was like, gosh, I hope that's not in the movie. I don't think I can handle it. And then it wasn't. I was like, hooray! And then that snake attack. And it felt like they filmed it and cut it out. Because it was so abrupt with Clementine.
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, it was really scary. And I was like, I don't want to see this. It's too scary.
Well, she like died in that floor.
Yeah, and she's like,
and it was very much
graphic.
more intense.
Yes, it was really graphic, and the way that like she gets bit, and then the camera cuts away. I will be interested to see when the DVD comes out if that's a deleted scene. It felt like they filmed it and
Not
then
the
opted.
DVD girl.
Yeah, I know.
All right, ease up, ease up. I felt like that was probably more to keep the rating down. I thought you were going to mention the bottling scene where a chick is literally bottled in the neck and is bone dry, and Coriolanus actually like holds her neck for a while, holds the wound theoretically, pulls his hands away, looks at his dry hands and goes, ah, as if they're covered in blood.
To be shirting out of that bottle.
As a human, as any like human specimen would have, like that's what would have happened, and she was just completely clean.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the ratings thing, I'm like, but like what happens with the snake bite isn't any more violent than any of the other things they've shown, so I'm not sure.
But the jump scares they gave us were intensely set up not to be the jump scares that you expected.
Yeah.
I think they tried to build suspense knowing you were going to be suspended. They were trying to build suspense the entire movie where like you were feeling like on edge, and then the jump scare came later and you were not expecting it. So I thought that they didn't go for gore, which the book is very, as Suzanne wrote the books, they got gorier as they went on.
Yeah.
But like I thought there was some times that like I was stunned and shocked, but no more than when Viola Davis was on screen anytime showing her beautiful, lovely, like sinisterness.
Yeah, she
was creepy as
yeah, she was. I mean, and so then I was looking up, like, you know, the actors, like, going through, and I was, like, interesting. I'm assuming it was for budgetary reasons, but, like, the young actors were all sort of relative unknowns and don't have very long resumes. And so I was, like... Other
than West Side Story for two of them, no.
Yeah.
Right, which was her only thing that she's done before this. And I was, like, I was appreciated how good the young cast was relative for them not having been, like, started when they were 5. I will also say, I did notice in the book that this time around, most people were very poorly described. So she left room for casting of almost any kind of actor. And sometimes when they were described as having sort of, like, tan skin, you're like, well, that could be a lot of different things, you know what I mean?
Most
like
humans.
Yeah, like that covers 90% of the complexions of the people on the planet. So I thought it was so cool that like she very intentionally like didn't she wanted to show that there was diversity, but she didn't want to lock any character into a physical type.
What was interesting about that to me is it felt like when I read the book, she wrote it for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like she knew that was going to be the premise.
Yeah.
However, this movie is a prequel. 60 years before. 64 years before the next Hunger Games movie. Everything in the movie was done backwards. There was more diversity now. There was newer technology in this one. There was things that were not, that should have progressed. Like they tried to go back so hard and re-edit out things that they thought were progressive that they actually did the reverse, because in the Hunger Games going forward, they've segregated people by race pretty hard, and they've done these places where like the capital's predominantly all white intentionally.
Yeah.
And this one, there was like tons of affluent non-white people in the capital.
Yep.
And that would not have even been the demographics of the lay of the land, so to speak. And so it's interesting that I felt like it was obscure and left open so they could add more diversity. But at the same time, and this is a weird statement coming from me, I thought at times there was more diversity added intentionally rather than sticking to what like their lore had set up already. That
Yeah.
they were adding that. I also thought everyone looked way more filthy and grungy than any of the other movies. Like, even coming further, like, intentionally made everyone look so grungy that I was like, not believable at all. That none of the all the districts dressing identical now and like looked nothing separated.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that, but before I do, like, in terms of diversity, can we just say it's setting a new bar with having a Down syndrome actress?
Oh yeah,
in
she's
this?
lovely. Yeah,
She was terrific.
and
Peter Dinklage, to be honest, like, and I was
differing
like,
abilities.
yeah, I was
one-armed
like,
individual
different physical characters. I was like, I was like really proud of them for that. So like, I see your point, but I'm like, it doesn't bother me. But I do want to talk about, so the Rotten Tomato scores are like wildly different, and I think I have a good reason for why the critics didn't like this movie, but the audiences did.
Do tell.
This was a movie for fans. This was not a movie for anyone who didn't particularly like The Hunger Games. This was fan service. Like, a lot of the negative reviews I saw was like, why would anybody want a story about snow? And I was like,
It's fascinating.
Like, I don't know that I wanted a story about snow as much as I wanted to hear about the 10th Hunger Games and what it was like before, right? Like, what led up to where the circumstances that Katniss found herself in, right? So I'm like, yeah, if you were not a Hunger Games fangirl, like, I don't know why you would like this movie.
Well, and I thought she took a wonderful approach when she wrote the book to be like, the Hunger Games were almost over. Like, in the book, it really describes the Hunger Games were on their last life.
Yes,
No one watched. No one was engaged. And it wasn't until Snow implemented some of these ideas, and it was, they intentionally in the book kept the competitors.
Right.
Tributes, thank you. Competitors sounded gross. They kept the tributes alive longer in the book. Right, like they would like send them stuff to stop them from killing so fast so they could get more viewers. And so, even though I knew the arena exploding was coming.
Oh, I know, me too.
That move, because they just like completely shut. I love when movies shut off sound during like a big explosion, and I'm just like like holding my breath with it. I thought that was such a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
You felt bomb time.
Yeah, like you were like,
yeah. But so, like, what they had to do, and sounds like you didn't love it, was like, rewind the clock, right? Take us 60 years before the Hunger Games world that we know and put us into this new world where, like, you know, they had a costume design, set design, all that stuff, so.
I did like the production design, such as it is. I don't know how much of it is CGI and how much of it was, like, you know, Greta Gerwig style built up. Making it kind of anywhere from Depression, Art Deco to mid-century modern, like the family TV set look with Lucky Flickerman. All those things just to make it feel 60 years before now.
Right. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, they went for a 40s vibe to rewind back 60 years.
Yeah. And I didn't feel the 40s because, like, everything was so, like, okay, you've got FaceTime technology, but you're still using coal-powered trains. Like, the disconnect between those versus, like, in the future, everything is virtual, everything is energy, everything is built on the hydro dam and the electricity that District 3 produces, technology.
Right. So here's how I took sort of the mix of technologies, was because there was post-war, right? So there were things that had survived from the previous war that they had energy for and things that hadn't, and they were starting again with, like, coal fire. I thought, like, the Peacekeeper uniforms, I was like, this is a good, like, rewind back to where they were. Like,
You know what they're modeled after, right?
Yeah.
No, what?
Early Nazi uniforms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Peacekeepers were modeled after early Nazi uniforms.
Yeah, there's a lot of Nazi imagery in this movie.
Blonde hair, blue-eyed man, like, literally trying to...
There's a lot of Nazi imagery. But yeah, so I
train cars.
Yeah. I thought even the zoo thing. I think the success overall of all of the filmings of the Hunger Games is usually you read a book and you just have such a picture in your head, and then you go see the movie and it's so different, and you're like, it's not that it's bad, it's just that I can't get with this. And somehow Hunger Games has always been successful for me. Like, it's always been filmed the way, more or less the way I pictured it, or not so dissonant with what I had in my head. Particularly, I loved Gaul's outfits.
That blood and white number.
It was such a precursor to the outlandishness that you would see the Capitol people wear. Like, her as sort of this, like, mastermind of this whole system looking to the future. I love that they kind of give her costumery that you can see the future of the, Effie's wigs, and, like, you can see Effie from her, and I thought that was really well done.
I thought like I said, I thought every time she came on the set, it was stunning. I wanted her to be more mad scientist. The book had so many of her little quips that were so odd that you would read. And here she only said like 3 of them. And I was like, you're giving me sinister, like she is in a mindset where she wants to be evil, where I think she's literally just psychotic.
I need deranged.
Yeah, like,
I need to give more
because the remorse
and her love of her, like, lab animals, I thought wasn't as strong as it could have been.
Yeah, like, I wanted her to have a detached from reality. That way she couldn't see what she was doing. Like, the contradiction between Peter Dinklage's character, Dean Highbottom, and Gaul was meant to be this push and pull of morality in the book. That's what I got from it, is, like, they were both struggling with, like, the Hunger Games are terrible, we shouldn't have done this, it was a joke, and, like, oh my god, we need this to elevate human existence to its finest point. And in the book, I kind of felt they were similar. In the movie, I felt they were both kind of riding that line just a little bit, and I was like, I wanted more extremes from both of them, because I love Peter Dinklage, but I wanted him to find some emotion in that very last scene, and I felt like I got a one note that entire last scene with him.
I wanted him to be more high. Like, he's supposed to be on heroin this whole movie.
Slur your drugs a little bit.
Yeah.
Slur your drugs.
Slur
your drugs or your words.
That's how it's done.
So there was, like, so there were a couple of, like, little also, like, Easter egg details that I appreciated that I wrote down.
Oh, yeah, rattle them off. These are fun.
Rat poison in, like, the opening shot of his apartment. I was like, I see what you did there. Lucy, when you see her back in District 12 as a snake bracelet on, loved that. His gun at the end has is a label or something on it that says 2. Like, he's going back for District 2,
okay.
which I thought was really cool. And, like, can I just say the Donald Sutherland quote at the end was terrific. I was so happy about that. But I could see people hating it. So let me...
I thought you were going to start talking about Easter eggs for the coming historical events. Like, when Lucy Gray does the line, it's a pretty little thing, but determined.
Yeah.
Some people call it some potato. I mean, you and I, we all know this. I think Katniss is better, don't you? I was like, oh, I wonder how this lands for other people. I heard someone in the audience go, oh. And I'm like, okay, it's working. All right.
Yeah.
I thought they did a very nice job of setting up you could see it is going to be, the Hunger Games have to evolve to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And the book was so well about, like, Snow becomes, I have to evolve, which means I have to take power, which means then I have to understand that power is oppressing people. And I thought they did a great job of him, but I was really disappointed with how they set up him and Sir Janus for, like, the future, because him and Sir Janus needed to become closer and bond more, so the betrayal felt more. I didn't feel like in the movie it portrayed, like, the book, he would help him and support him. He would take him food. They would do stuff together. And, like, I felt like there was not that build for the future versus, like, the reason he gets the Plinth Prize is because Sir Janus was his best friend.
Yeah.
They really bonded in the book. And here I kind of felt like the whole time he hated the guy.
Yeah, I did not feel that in the book.
No, I didn't.
No,
Oh,
I
really?
was like the whole time he hated the guy in the book.
Yeah, he was resenting him the whole time, and just
he was like
because he was expeditious,
or like he felt like, oh, this is what it means to be a good person, like you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, I guess I'll be a good friend now, but like it always seemed reluctant to me.
Well,
I always
point. Yeah, so when Sejanus passes, I'm getting all southern all of a sudden. When he went on to his eternal reward, in the book. Snow cries because he's afraid of what will happen to him. And in the movie, he seemed to be crying because he was like, he holds up a picture of the two of them together and starts weeping. It's almost played as if he actually feels bad and misses his friend.
And see, like, going back to, like, the very first scene where they're stealing food, he's stealing food from the table. They have this long conversation in the book about, like, I know what it's like to not have enough food, da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, I'm not taking it from me. I'm taking it, I think he blames it. He's like, my grandmother just loves this, like, stuff. And we, they're out of it at the luxury of the yacht or whatever. Yeah. And so I feel like in the book, they really had that kind of, Sejanus knew what was happening.
Yeah. Oh, because then his mom starts bringing them food.
Right.
Oh, I see. There's more intimacy.
And so, like, when we kind of get that Sejanus is just a rebel from the start. And I felt like in the book, it was kind of Sejanus builds into this idea more and more, the more he has to participate and the more he's forced to murder his own people.
Yeah.
So it was I wanted knockoff Eminem to be more loving.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other thing that I noticed a lot of, and I was, I couldn't write down every instance, but I was paying a lot of attention to when characters held hands.
Ooh.
That was such a callback to the original.
They're holding hands.
And it was like the moment where she reaches for his hand. Some of the other tributes like link hands, like, and I was like, I thought again, like fan service. I was like, this was really cool because like the symbolism of the taking of someone's hand was such a big part of the original Hunger Games.
But that's what made it so good is like now when I hear that line from him and when I rewatch the other movies, I will think that he is so disdain because like I used to be like that. I used to be that person. So there's resentment and disdain for himself. That was one of my favorites, Nicole.
Oh, here's something for you. What do you think? Yeah. I thought the final, not final scene, but kind of the climactic scene in the woods with the guns. See, I felt so. Me and Garret are just diverging completely. I thought that was done better than in the book. Because in the book, it felt like, to me, it felt just like he went, oh, I guess I don't really need her.
Yeah.
It just felt really sudden. Whereas in the movie, it was more visceral, the experience of him turning on her. Like, it felt more real.
You think he turned on her?
We don't know, well, he eventually did. He's firing at her. So, but we don't know, like, what her position is, right? We don't know what her process is, but we follow his, and it felt more natural.
So let's talk about it. I asked you both, when you read the book, what do you think happened to Lucy Gray at the end? And did your opinion, or did you feel that the movie filmed the ending that you thought?
I felt like we were set up to not know and for it to be a mystery.
Okay.
I think she has to live. I think that's the whole point. Like, if she doesn't live, then If he kills her, I don't think he could have. He has to have some sort of revenge to have for the rest of his life. If he'd known she was dead, he wouldn't have been as salient in his power grab because he would not have seen how someone can betray you so hard, and that revenge was so palpable.
Yeah. So I thought when the book ended, I was like, girl living her best life in District 13. She made it. Like,
good on
that
her.
was like my feeling. And then watching the movie, I noticed when they're talking about the first Lucy Gray from is it poem or song? Poem, right?
So the poem song, yeah.
Whatever. So when they're talking about it, she says, oh no, she survived. She's out there somewhere.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, like, she's so firm in that belief, Lucy Gray. The character is like, no, she's out there somewhere.
And we never see a body.
Yeah, we never see a body. We don't know for sure.
Well, he couldn't find tracks. Like, in the book, like, he literally, like, walks back to the cabin, gets the guns, because they're just sitting there in the corner in the book. They're not, he's...
under a floorboard.
Right. Which was... Because that was an interesting part. I thought the cabin... That's what I didn't like. The setup to the cabin scene of finding the guns and everything like that, I was like, Like, it wasn't good enough for me to him to have that realization moment until he had the gun shooting at her.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you've already supposed to have this moment already. I want you angry by this point, not realizing why you're shooting.
Okay.
And when the snake bites him, you know, that's the ultimate betrayal. The whole Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is it bites him. The Mockingjays are flying around. They're emanating her. So she just kind of disappears while he's been bitten by a snake, which is...
Yeah. Looking back on the whole thing, I had this thought in like the shower last night where you have all your billion ideas about how it goes. So to completely bore everybody in the audience, skip ahead 3 minutes. I was thinking about Lucy and I was like, oh, this is interesting because I would guess unintentionally, just intuitively, Suzanne Collins did something very interesting with the character of Lucy. So, everybody has heard of game theory, Beautiful Mind, John Nash, Prisoner Dilemma, right? Like the idea that you have to pick your strategy based on what the other person is going to do. And the Prisoner's Dilemma says, look, you're both better off if no one talks to the cops. But if the other person talks to the cops, you're screwed. So your best move to avoid the worst possible outcome where someone talks and you don't and you get hosed is to talk to the cops yourself, right?
And give up the optimal.
You give up the optimal to avoid the worst.
Yeah.
But that's in a single move game. If you're in a repeated move game, where there's going to be multiple iterations of whether you decide if you're going to trust or betray the other person in a game, the optimal strategy is called tit for tat, right? So you first play trust, that your opening move is to trust the other person, and then you just give them back whatever they give you. So if they betray you, you betray them back. If they trust you, you keep trusting them. And I thought about it, I was like, darned if Lucy Gray didn't play 100% of a tit-for-tat strategy.
Well, I think that's what I liked about the book. I thought she did better in the book, saying, like, she never was very clear about her sentences. They were kind of open to him. Like, when he's, do you like me? What are we doing here? She knew how to save her own life when she especially found out, because in the book it goes through, they have to describe to them that they're going to get sponsors, that they know this now. And so that's why she actually inclines to perform, not because she's in love with him. And that was a little like...
I felt like the snake scene in the opening of the movie and her tribute scene played so differently in the movie than it did in the book. Like, in the movie, when she drops that snake behind that girl's dress, you were like, game on. This girl is here to play.
Right.
She almost looked like, I mean, she did have malice, but she looked like she was like cunning and sly, versus in the book, she was more just like, I did this because you literally caused this.
Yeah.
Not reactive. Tit for tat.
Yes. And it was tit for tat because that girl
set her up for the Hunger Games.
Like, and so, like, you know, and then you come to the end and she's like, she's realizing he's going to betray her and she's playing her strat. And she's like, all right, I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. But I just thought, I was like, this is so interesting because it was like, I made the joke. I was like, all of economic theory is stumbling across common sense and then hailing it as innovation.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh, anyone could have told you. Like, she intuitively has a tit-for-tat strategy. And I was like, that's interesting because that is the optimal strategy.
This reminds me of what Katniss said in, I want to say it's the end of Catching Fire, or maybe it's the beginning of Mockingjay, that, like, the games don't end once you're out of the arena. I think Lucy Gray plays the game the entire time.
Yep.
And I think she plays it till the end where she, you know, the snake still bites him. And, like, that's her only way to escape, is to give back something that he gave in trust to her, that she knew he would pick up because it was his mother's. Like, she's brilliant.
Genius.
She's brilliant.
Do we... See, I find it more interesting to think about where she was at the whole time, right? I kept
That's
waiting.
What's fun about the book and the movie.
Yeah, it's I kept waiting for the reveal when we find out that she was like, it was all an act. You know, and obviously we never get that, but I felt like she was playing him, and I was, she's playing them against each other, or at least just, because, hey, look, as a petite woman in this world, like, that's kind of what you have to do. You have to find a broad-shouldered guy who can, with good aim, and stay close to him. You know what I mean?
But I also felt like their involvement at the Hob was very odd. Like, it felt like, all of a sudden, no, we're kind of forgiving everybody. She's here. Like, I still wanted there to be more of that vengeance from the mayor's daughter. And Billy Tope to kind of be like, playing both of them a little more, because in the book he kind of like really like sells the meat crock of stew and says, this is the best stew in the world, and they're both kind of like, you're a terrible person, but I love you more still. And then when she kind of like says, I'm over you, I don't want to be with you anymore, and then he kind of gets like involved in, well, let's rebel then, I'll be on your side. Like, I wasn't sold on the Billy Tope narrative in the movie, but it's also harder to portray that because when you can write down narratives that she tells, like, she's telling Coriolanus all these stories, and so
for sure it was a trailer for the second half of the movie.
Yeah.
I found myself like hating myself for it, but in those moments in the third part 3, going, this really should have been a second movie.
Yeah,
like I hate.
You saw the controversy online about it, right? Like,
I know. I did look at the whole Billy Tope storyline with new eyes, because I was like, oh, the reason this is all in here and the point of it is like, she's been burned by a dude before. She is not a woman who's ever gonna trust a boyfriend the same way she did that first time. And I was like, I missed it in the book, but I'm like, that's also like, you have to see her motivation of like, yeah, this is all good and working now, but like,
you will turn on me so fast.
Yeah, you can turn on me at any point. Like, she has that mind of like, she is always looking a step ahead.
And that in the cabin was the only scene I thought was done well. When he says, well, you would never turn on me. And she's like, oh, I would sell you down the river if I needed to like keep myself alive. Like, realizing that her only survival was now tied up in him.
Right.
And that she had to distance herself. But then I wanted that scene to be the connected one. I wanted that scene to realize he look at her and start to really press her. It's like, why are you going outside? It's still raining. Like, instead he's like, it's raining. You're going outside. What's wrong? What are you doing? And like, I wanted him to be having that real time moment with her where she's trying to get out. And he's like, why are you going outside? Like, the anger started to build there instead of having to have a toxic masculine gun to understand that now he doesn't like his female partner.
See, I like the delay because I thought it's the fact that she catches on to the situation and she knows him better than he knows himself. Mm. She sees the turn coming before he realizes he's going to turn, and they play it that way, and I thought I liked that better than the way they did in the book, where they both kind of simultaneously are like, what's going on here?
That cabin scene in the book where they do figure it out at the same time, that they realize that they both can't trust each other. And then I think it's him in the book who offers to go out looking for things. Like, it sets it up that he's more likely to harm her in that situation. And I like the empowerment it gives her. But I think it takes away from the ideal to realize that they both look past some of the red flags of each other to realize that I think the salience for me is that same moment makes them both understand, oh, all of this was an act for both of us in different ways.
Yeah.
I'm undecided on that. I think it was definitely an act, but simultaneously they did care for each other. Like, I think they set that up in towards the middle as well. She's like, which is it? And he says it's both. And I wonder. I think that was Katniss's deal too. I think all of them, Lucy Gray, Snow, Katniss, they were all in these survival situations where they wanted to love somebody, but they just couldn't because they were worried about dying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs says safety is number one.
Precisely.
On the bottom.
Again, with Billy Tope's storyline, I think it's more than that for Lucy. Like, I don't think she's inclined to trust in the same way that she was before. And I think what you see, and I think that's what, again, I think having to see it a second time, you realize, I realized, making my way through the book, like, the shadow of Katniss is so long. Mm. You're like, this is not Katniss. Like, right. They are two totally different people, and they are playing these games in two totally different ways. But I think there's, like, an intentional, like, a kind of, like, gotcha for the audience where you're like, oh, she's from District 12, she sings her songs, like, there's a feeling of, like, we're back in the same comfortable place, and there's a slow reveal of, like, no, man, like, this is not Katniss.
Which, reading the book and then seeing it on screen, it made me think, like, he uses Peeta Snow uses Peeta to poison Katniss because this happened to him. And now he knows exactly how to hurt her the worst because he's lived through it.
That's a good point. I never thought of that.
And that's some grotesque villain
Yeah.
right there. But, like, I loved it. Because I felt like it made more sense once I read the book and then saw the movie why he used... Because it never really made sense. Why not just kill Peeta? Like, it never made sense.
Like, why is this man so obsessed with this girl?
Yeah,
like what is it that, like, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, and this...
Well, and you notice at the very end of the movie, she has a braid in her hair.
Yeah.
Going down the side of her head, which was not in the book, which I thought was a great stylistic choice.
Yeah.
But she has the Katniss braid in her hair, and it's like he's now seen her, and that's why he wants to make her pay with Peeta, because, oh, you know what love is? I'll turn love on you. He loves you so much, I'll now make him, like, the one thing that can kill you.
Katniss versus Lucy Gray. These are two different stories. They have two different themes. They're making two different points. And...
That's fascinating. I thought they made the exact same point.
Interesting.
What are they? Go ahead.
One's own self-perseverance, whether it deteriorates your mind or body, is the most important thing.
Oh, I can see that. I can also see the differences being, like, what is kind of messed up about
Katniss
people.
Had to love somebody for her own perseverance to survive.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm totally going with
but,
what
like,
you're saying.
Snow had to give up his own to survive. Lucy had to fight. Like, it's... Say more, not less.
Right. So I think, yeah, that's all there. And then also what I love about what Suzanne Collins does with these novels is pointing out just sociological habits. That's, and there are different ones that she highlights in each book, which, is fun for history buffs and pessimists in general.
So I feel like the original series puts you in the perspective of the tributes, right? What would it be like to have to go through this, and how would you? It forces you to think about, like, how do you deal with oppression, and extreme circumstances. I feel like the point of this book was, so when part of what annoyed me about, like, oh, we're in the mind of Snow, like, who cares about this mad villain? I was like, you've completely missed the point. By putting us in the perspective of Snow, you're putting us in the perspective of the people who create and watch the games. So now we're on the side of the people who are culpable for the perpetuation of the games, right? Like, we are the people who are watching The Bachelor. And we are all the people who, right? Like, that's who we are. Like, how did we I don't watch The Bachelor, but whatever reality TV thing you do, we've all done it. Everybody has a reality TV weakness. I refuse to let you out of this.
I know what you did.
Yeah, but so it's about our culpability in the system from being a cog in the machine and not being the tribute.
And they want you to feel, the whole purpose of this book is wanting you to feel empathy for him. And it goes about such a way in the movie, especially, I felt like, because his facial expressions, actually, the micro changes in his facial movements, I thought was beautifully done. But they want you to feel empathy. You know they're asking for empathy, and you try to, like, say, I'm not giving him empathy. But then you actually fall in more of, like, I kind of understand. Not necessarily empathy, but, like,
right.
I get it. I get why you did this. You were harassed. You were sought out. You were literally made to kill your own. He was a tribute in this book. That's the whole setup and premise to me, is Gaul gave him his own Hunger Games. And he won by killing 3, maybe 4 people.
Right.
And, in the Hunger Games, only the victors, starting from the, like, I think it's the 30th is what the thing says, only then was, like, killing multiple people at one time extreme, because everybody typically just killed one at a time systematically, and you died somewhere in the process. And so she makes him play his own Hunger Games. She makes him do everything. She makes him become popular. She makes him reach out for fame. She makes him do everything he's offered up. She bets on him with Highbottom, with the plinth prize. She created a Hunger Games for Snow to live, breathe, and die in. And then he survives against all the odds. Because what? Snow
Hands on top.
And then she creates irreversible process because now he understands what it's like to be a victor, and it's better to be the victor than the oppressed.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like, it wasn't, again, empathy is the right word, but it was like walk a mile in someone's shoes. Like, I don't agree with him. I would not feel these feelings. I would not react the same way. But again, I do think either way, we're saying sort of the same thing. Like, we're forced to look at the world through his eyes. And again, I think we're forced, I hope we're forced to contend with our own culpability. Like, what part are we playing in this world? Whereas in the Hunger Games, like I said, I think you feel like, oh, I'm totally like Katniss and I'm the oppressed one and I'm just the hero. Like, you're not forced to contend with your own morality in the same way.
I did always identify with the capital citizens.
Did you?
Yeah, I was like, I have it really good. Like, I benefit from other people suffering on a daily basis.
It's a exercise in privilege, right? Like, it's easy to be like, well, you can see how the capital citizens are complacent because they become the 99%.
And they don't see what goes on.
Right, they don't, because, again, they're only fed, we had this conversation about a different movie, but, like, media that you're fed is what you can absorb. Even if all the media is varied, if that's still the most liberal thing you see and the most conservative are still the same picture, besides what's behind the lens, which is people starving, people dying, people literally farming coal, which doesn't make any sense in a technological, you literally have people oppressed just for the point of oppression at that point.
Right.
Because coal doesn't get you anything in this scientific world.
It's just mean.
Yeah.
No, it's literally like, it's like they do it to power, like, things in the districts.
Right.
But it also, like, hydropower is their number one District 5.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense, but you just oppress to oppress at that point. And I think that's what I love about these books and these movies is, like, I hate all of it because it's so dystopian you think it could never happen when we're actually living parallels of it now.
Oh, for sure. It's historical accounts just mushed together in one situation. And what I think what you guys just pointed out and made me realize is that the key difference between the two scenarios, the 64 years ago and we'll call it present day, is the blindness of the capital citizens is a very different breed, right? It's in Katniss's day, it's that just ignorance and complacency from being just fat and happy. And in Snow's day, it was blindness from anger and PTSD and living through hunger and death, and they just wanted revenge.
Yeah. I think for me, I sort of took it as like Katniss is like aspirational, right? Like we all want to think we're Katniss.
Hell yeah.
We're just gonna hide and try not to hurt anybody and just let Peeta do all the dirty work for us.
Yeah, right.
Right? But I'm like brass tacks people, and this is how I play games, so I'm giving away all of my game strategy right now. I always play a tit for tat strategy in cooperative games. And I was like, I felt like Lucy Gray was so relatable. Like, she was the character that I would really be if I were in the games. Like, I wouldn't have been Katniss. And so I really enjoyed, because so many people complained about Katniss's passivity. And I was like, yeah, it was kind of nice to see Lucy Gray.
Your face, men complained.
Oh, my bad. Fair enough. I really enjoyed Lucy Gray. I love that we don't ever get to know her very well because she's only being viewed through men's eyes, and that she has her own motivations, which we are not privy to. But she is here to play the game.
Yeah. And she plays and wins.
Men mistake her as weak, and she still wins.
I mean, he did cheat, like, a lot to get her to win. Like, she wouldn't have won if she hadn't cheated, but that's fine.
But she got him to cheat.
But that's to say to the point that he was the first sponsor. It's the irony. He's the first sponsor. He bends the rules to make sure that he can win. Like, he is literally the walking, breathing proposal he puts forward and does all of these things to bend the rules, which is why he knows how far sponsors will go to help their favorites.
Yeah. All right. final thoughts?
I'm really glad we did this as the three of us.
Yeah.
It was a very I wasn't quite sure what to, and I think this is important for the Hunger Games because everybody takes something very different away from them. And I think that's the point. And I think Suzanne Collins does a great job of being provocative in the right ways. I think sometimes writers of dystopian do very wrong ways of dystopian. They're like either good or bad. Like
I will defend Hunger Games to the death. I think it's a really good story, and I think that people are really dismissive of it. And I'm like, look, I've read a lot of science fiction. Like, I've read all kinds, from this sort of lauded people down to, you know, whatever trash is out there. And I'm like, Hunger Games is pretty good.
It's solid.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I enjoy is like the different perspectives that it's the same book and movie brought is very rare, because usually you can be like, I really felt this, I really felt this. It was a great adaptation of a movie from a book that didn't stray very far at all, I thought. And that's the last time I can really say that has been years ago.
That's what I like about the movies too, is like, I can't think of another movie that films the books so well. Where I love the movies and I love the books. And I, like, when the casting came out, I was like, I was literally picturing Donald Sutherland in my head when I read the books.
Perfect.
Like, it was like, and the Woody I was like, oh God, of course it's Woody Harrelson. Couldn't be anybody other than Woody Harrelson. Like, I just think that, like, they capture the vision of the book so well. So, like, all credit to, yes, Francis Lawrence, but, like, all of the production staff.
Casting, direction, production, yeah, the performances. I mean, we forgot to mention trans actress in the cast this time.
Mm-hmm.
I was not aware.
Yep, Tigress.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. So, social impact score for this one in particular. This is a really hard one. I'm not sure I know what to give it.
Because it's like, it's the third or fourth wave of dystopian YA movies that the original Hunger Games kicked off.
Right.
So it's hard to say that.
You've got the polarizing Rotten Tomatoes score.
But how much we've done this before for a score that I can't quite give.
I
It does activate a lot of conversation. And so the social impact for me there starts at a 4. If it's going to polarize people to talk about it, at least a 4. Because you have to then have those conversations about why. But I don't know that people felt any more draw to it than they did from the original dystopian surge. So I'm going to say probably a 5 for the fact of, like, you can talk about it if you look for it. But if you're just going to enjoy a movie, a 2.
Okay. You know what, Garrett? I'm just gonna write off of your score. That was a pretty compelling argument, so I'll go with 5. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going with 5 too, because I think, again, like, it's hard to give a score because this wasn't for everybody. Hunger Games was for everybody. This was just for fans of Hunger Games. It wasn't. I don't think it was even trying to have this broad appeal. Like, it didn't have the budget, clearly, right? And so I'm like, but what it did well. Like, I, as a fan, was, like, happy to see this movie, thought it was well made, really enjoyed it, glad we had this conversation. I mean, like, I couldn't wait to talk about it with you guys.
Same.
Like, this was painful. And I only had to wait a day. And I guess I feel like, I'm going to give it a 6, because I feel like this is one of those cases where, because it's something for teenage girls, everybody writes it off. And yet it has had a pretty big impact. Even the prequel, just bringing up the Hunger Games again and making everybody think about the Hunger Games.
It's currently surging as the #1 most watched streamed movie.
Yeah, I did a whole rewatch after I read the book.
Like, even people who won't go see this movie,
right,
rewatch the Hunger Games.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, it brought it kind of back into consciousness, and there was a reason that it had the success that it did, and that Divergent didn't. Right, like it.
Or the Maze Runner, rest in peace.
The maze of endless running. No, Nicole, and I think you should hit on a good point. Is like, dystopian books were originally written to be young teenage girl fiction about love stories. And Suzanne Collins takes this and turns it on its head and says, oh, you want your traditional love story? How about I make one of them like a murdering villain? And you have to now decide who you like more. The person who wants to murder back, or the person who saved your life by murdering? So good luck.
Ouch.
Yeah. And I will say, second point, we have talked about this on the podcast. Many articles have been written about the aging Hollywood stars. Here's a movie who planted its flag in a whole bunch of young stars. I don't know which or if any of them will take off. So I'm excited to see more from the cast. So 6 for me.
Lovely.
Alrighty. Recommendations?
I tried to all weekend, and usually I come with like 10 million recommendations, and Nicole tells me to back off in a nice way. I just like recommending things. I couldn't, and this is why.
Okay.
If you've seen the original Hunger Games and you watch this, you don't need anything more at this point. You are satisfied and content with a good adaptation of a book to film. You got to relive your Hunger Games fantasy. You saw a villain become empathized. And you got a good soundtrack out of the whole thing. So I didn't know what more I wanted to recommend other than being like, see it again.
See it again.
Watch it with the different eyes this time.
See it with your family. For those of you who are with your family or chosen family or whomever else you're celebrating this greatest of all American days, in my opinion.
Maybe just history books. Like Garret pointed out earlier, these books are nonfiction. They're just curated efficiently. Go back and read history, guys. This stuff is happening now and has happened over and over and over again. Panem is, they explain, Panem is Latin for Panem at circuses or something, bred in circuses.
Yeah. Like
this stuff, it all happens and happened. Like, it's the real world is just as twisted and entertaining as these Suzanne Collins books. So yeah,
she just does it in a way that's palpable.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a recommendation totally off topic. I'm going to take you back to the 90s. I'm recommending the movie and the soundtrack to The Power of One. The book is also really good. It's a white savior story, but it is not your typical white savior story. It is a self-aware white savior story that was literally like filmed in the 90s. Like, it's well worth a watch. Again, has nothing to do with Hunger Games, but that's where we're at. All right. Thank you for listening. If you want to reach out to us, email is moviesmatterpod@gmail.com. Our website is moviesmatterpodcast.com. YouTube, Spotify, wherever you want to talk to us, come find us. Again, we're here for all the commentary. Find us on Facebook. We're not on Twitter anymore, or X, whatever you want to call it.
Neither.
We don't do it. Justin sends me Twitter threads and I make fun of him for it. I was like, you're still on Twitter. And may the odds
be ever
in your favor.
Happy
We'll see
Hunger
you
Games.
next time.